So moving forward, we've definitely got more things to look at to make sure it is a success. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fitzpatrick. If I can now put it to the vote, please. All those in favour?
Have we actually taken it?
Votes carried.
No.
Disclose the preferred.
Yep. So the preferred provider is Nested Kids Undercover.
Could you say that again, sorry?
Nested Kids Undercover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. We'll move on to item 15.2, which is planning permit application 22/0546 lot subdivision removal of native vegetation on Oxley Plains Road, Oxley. Thank you, Director Swart.
Thank you. This planning permit application is for 6 lot subdivision and removal of native vegetation. Notice of the application was given and 5 objections were received. The application was also referred to relevant authorities. Council officers have completed an assessment of the application against the Wangaratta planning scheme. They've considered the public submissions and also responses from referral authorities. And the officers recommend that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit, subject to the conditions contained in attachment 1 to the agenda.
Thank you, Director Swart. Are there any questions from the gallery on this issue? Thank you. Can I look for a mover of this recommendation, please? Councillor Russell, and a seconder, Councillor Benson. Councillor Russell, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It is a relatively straightforward subdivision, this one, so I'm going to.
Thank you. Any other councillor like to talk on the subdivision? Councillor Herry?
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Apparently at face value, it is an inoffensive little subdivision, also many would regard it. However, I just want to take a brief moment to explore native vegetation removal and just the framework behind that. Because this does involve native vegetation removal, and it's relatively minor, the proposed vegetation to be removed. However, I just want to set the context. You have to keep in mind that Victoria is the most cleared state in Australia. So you can go all over the place and you can look at trees and go, wow, we've got a lot of trees. However, when you consider the fact that 79% of it has been cleared, you might go out and look at those trees and think, oh gee, we don't quite have as many trees as we thought. We have very few trees that we really need to protect. Now, the Victoria Auditor General's Office released a report explaining that as a whole, the state is absolutely failing in its no net loss of vegetation, unequivocally. So, ironically, the net gain report, in terms of net gain of vegetation, reported a net loss of around 10,000 hectares in 2022, I think it was. So just that's the context in which we operate. So you come back to a planning subdivision, such as this one, and it's the removal of a very small tree, very, very small, bifurcated tree, and offsets will be paid, granted. However, and I read from the report of the Victorian Auditor General's Office, councils are not consistently applying the mitigation hierarchy. Under the mitigation hierarchy, councils should approve removal of native vegetation only as a last resort. They must first be clear that it is unavoidable and is always minimised. So if councils do not apply the mitigation hierarchy, offsetting becomes the default position. Now, it's probably not the planning application to dive a ditch over, And granted, as the planning report highlights, there are a lot of gains, a lot of benefits. There's a whole tranche of what's defined as planted vegetation at the southern boundary, which is going to be put into a reserve. So you know, then there's some vegetation on the western boundary, which is also deemed planted and can be removed without a permit application and offsets. But on the whole, you could argue that it's a favourable outcome. However, I'm very much near an end.
He has quickly end up there, Jack.
Yep, so at the end of the day, could that single tree have been retained? Probably. Does it suggest the default position of offsetting? I'm not sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Airy. Any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Russell, as the mover, you are allowed as a rebuttal on anything there. Would you like to, before you do, is any other councillor want to talk on the recommendation? No, Councillor Russell, to finish.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, I just want to just clarify the name of the bench that we're talking about here. It's two red gum seedlings, 23 to 5 years old, I would estimate. They are very, very strong trees. That's what's good.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Director Swart. Item 15.3 is the creative precinct business case and concept design.
Thank you. In October last year, Council endorsed the draft Wangaratta Creative Precinct business case and concept design for public exhibition. The document is a master plan for the future of the Wangaratta Creative Precinct and the current services of the Wangaratta Art Gallery and Performing Arts Centre. The public exhibition process of the plan has been completed, and a summary of the feedback received is included in the council agenda as attachment 2. The feedback provides general support for the plan and no changes are proposed in response to the feedback. Officers recommend that council consider the feedback received and adopts the Wangaratta Creative Precinct business case and concept design, which is the final step in the council approval process.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery on this one? No, thank you. Can I look for a mover of this recommendation? Councillor Grant, and seconded by, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Grant, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Yes,
Move it.
to say that I'm pleased that we've, after consultation, after a huge amount of work that's gone into this process, that we're now at the point where we can move forward. We've gone towards actually seeing this become a reality into the future. Like so many projects, there's still a lot of things that need to be ironed out in terms of how it actually is developed on the ground. But I think in terms of our art scene, our cultural scene here in Wangaratta, this is going to have a huge positive impact. They are really positive in terms of tourism and visitation. I know there are going to be some issues around parking and all that sort of thing, and they're things that we need to investigate and iron out as we move forward. But I think this is a once-off opportunity and one that I think we can do well to move forward on. And I actually want to acknowledge the work of people like Simone Nolan, the huge amount of work that she's done as one of the team, but some terrific work done in that space.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Benson?
Thanks, Mayor. In considering this, I know I'm giving support to the concept design in principle in the past, but on every case that I've been able to bring up the interest or situation of parking for visitors here, I'm still not convinced with all the reports that are written there how we're going to keep chipping away at some of the parking in Wangaratta. We have a real regional centre, business centre, and we seem to be always able to bring up facts and things to chip away. And yet every planning permit or every retail person in Wangaratta has to provide planning parking outside their business for customers and their own business. becoming more of a problem for the employees in the business centre, where they've got to walk and they've got to park, day parking, and we have a multi-store car park here that no one seems to really choose to go into. Maybe the reasons I don't choose to be there, because I don't have confidence of getting in and out of there with the vehicle that I drive. Probably I should build the roads on the side. But anyway, I still of the opinion that if people want to choose to be able to park where they want to park, and it is becoming chipped away with everything we seem to do in the CBD. The other situation that I believe is the visitor centre. We spend thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing in the city of Wayne. And we seem to have a concept now that the visitor centre is going to become all digital. We're going to find our way around the space and the municipality by working with iPads, talking to iPads, and I have the last 2 days talking to computers on telephones, not just about over talking to digital stuff, in relationship to moving forward. The period of operation is only, I believe, between 10 and 2 of the day. It doesn't tell me how that's going to actually work. I would say this corner precinct out the corner will be one of the most busiest corners we're going to have in Wangaratta. Going forward, we've got 1,600 lots being developed plus in Wangaratta. It's going to be a far bigger, busier place vehicle-wise. Everyone says yes, we can walk 800 metres and do a loop march around Wangaratta to go and find our information and go wherever you want to go. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber today, if they had to do 800 metres or 50 metres, I know which one they'd rather do 50 metres than an 800 loop march around Wang. The problem I have with the concept of the design is addressing to take away the car parking that's there. The visitor centre, I don't think, is going to answer is the holy grail, especially the amount of money that we're spending. I'm afraid this man, I cannot support going further to address those issues. And I know these issues, Mr. Mayor, I brought up in relation to a car parking strategy that we're going to have. Well, I would like to be the other way around. I think we've got the car before the horse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Eyre?
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Perhaps first, just to address a couple of the points that some colleagues have raised. With respect to the cost of the whole proposal, maybe put it in context, the gym upgrade and the sum of the pool combined, the sum of a great deal more than the proposed cost of this proposal. And I guess I don't need to go into the extensive explanation about the economic benefits and that broad concept of economic activity, which is not particularly one I subscribe heavily to anyway, but I mean, tourism, arts tourism, culture tourism is greater than sports, it's greater than wineries. We often do a lot of those other things without questioning. And I have to quickly mention that the arts can enrich lives in really complex and diverse ways. And it's not just that economic benefit, but so many social benefits for our local community to gain from having a vibrant and well-supported and facilitated arts facilities and vibrant culture that accompanies it. Briefly, I'm glad that there has been mention for the future of this future project. This future project will take a number of years potentially to get off the ground if it's approved and followed through with. But then, of course, there's a limited footprint there, so the concept of going up a second story, it is noted it will be explored in the detailed design. What do we want to do in 50 years' time when, as Councillor Benson says, the town is much larger? And just onto the point and contention around, I guess, that whole car parking thing, it's not that we have got to walk. I mean, we were built to walk. Like, it's not such the issue around spaces and the physical car spaces, except for certain demographics. It's the culture, I think. We need to shift our approach to our relationship with walking and see it as a blessing rather than an obligation, and and shift that culture and potentially change some of our infrastructure projects, you know. Imagine if there was an incredible green corridor that led from the multi-storey car park to the arts centre, for example, and went through some of the laneways and out the back here. If we design things such that the walk was a beautiful time to connect with people about the performance or the exhibition you just saw, a beautiful time to just enjoy the greenery around you. It's not got to walk, it's not an obligation, it's not a group march. But anyway, that's a cultural thing that we'll keep chipping away at. Otherwise, the proposal has a lot of positives, and I think they've been spoken to in papers and in people's submissions, and thank you for all of those submissions, by the way.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. Any other councillor like to talk? Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just acknowledging Clayamber and also Grady Vic, who helped us to get to this point, as well as the staff that put a lot of time and effort in getting out that message and getting the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any other councillor before I go back to Irene as the mover? No, I'd just like to also point out that prior to exploration of car parking, a planning permit will have to be sought, and parking and other considerations around that will have to be mitigated in this planning application to go forward. Even though we might approve this process as now, and having this thing that we want to go ahead with, we have to go through a full planning process like anybody else to make sure that we can accommodate what we need to. So thank you. Councillor Grant, as the mover, would you like to end the conversation?
Yes, and just to acknowledge comments that the other councillors made in terms of their support or otherwise of the business case and concept design. I mean, we've got, as I said in my moving of the recommendation, we've got a lot of work to do still. You know, we've had the in-principle support from the community around this. There's still a lot of work to do in terms of the money that we will get or need to get to support this project. You know, I certainly endorse Councillor Herring's comments about walking not being an obligation, but it should be a pleasure. And it behoves us as a council to look at ways and certainly work on ways that we can actually make that much more of a pleasure around the rural city, because it shouldn't be just about parking, it should be about the amenity of our community and how do we improve that. So here's an opportunity to do a whole lot of things, enrich the cultural and social fabric of our community and make it a better place to be. So the next step forward.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll put the recommendation to a vote to all councillors. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 17.1, minutes of advisory reports. So the recommendation is the council notes the minutes of the advisory committee's report, which was the audit risk committee meeting on the 22nd of September 2022. There's no questions from the gallery. I'll look for a mover of that report, Councillor Fitzpatrick, and a seconder, Councillor Herry. Councillors know if there's no talk on that motion, we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour, and that recommendation is carried. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings to a conclusion the formal part of our main part of the meeting here today. We will go down to public question time, and I'll just read a couple of questions first that came in via writing, and we'll get those, and then I'll go to the gallery. If you've got any questions, we ask you to step forward to the microphone, push the little button which has got the man speaking on it. There, state your name for the record so we can have it on record, and because it needs to be included in the minutes, and then ask your question. You have a quantity of 2 questions. If we cannot answer your question today, we will endeavour to get back to you ASAP within this week to answer those questions. As a question may come up that we don't have the answers directly in front of us, but we will get back to you. So the first question that I will read is from Venetia Contessa, and the question is: increase disabled parking around Wangaratta District Special School and change to existing parking restrictions around the school zones. This is a question will be, I'll get Marcus Goonan to answer that question in relation to that disabled parking around that special school. Thank you, Director Goonan.
Thank you, Mayor Rees, and thank you for your question. So Unfortunately, schools are exempt from most of the planning requirements, which often means parking is inadequate, and we see that throughout the towns and throughout this municipality. It then falls back on council to resolve these parking issues. So officers have been out to have a look at the school and the surrounding parking requirements of residents. We believe that there's some additional space on street, which is the only place that we can obviously access space for parking for all abilities, for an additional all abilities parking bay. And officers will also review the existing parking limits in conjunction with the residents and the school to see if future time changes would assist with that. We expect that work to take about 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank you, Director Goonan. A second question is by Monique Helena, and her question is, could Council please provide an update on the initiating the Diversity and Inclusivity Reference Group or Advisory Committee agreed to in March 2021 Council meeting, and are their terms of reference publicly available? Again, I look to Director Goonan for this answer.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Mon. I actually think you were probably working on this project when you were at council. So we have had a little bit of a delay in pulling this together, but we are reforming the Diversity and Inclusion Committee with an EOI which is out at the moment, and the first meeting to be held in late March. As part of the development of the Access and Inclusion Framework, we will also be looking to advertise for external working groups over the next 2 months, and the terms of reference will be developed in advance of that group and then amended and agreed to by the working group.
Great answer, thank you, Director Goonan. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a couple of questions, please raise your hand and I'll ask you to come forward and direct your question here to the microphone. So, I know over the back you'd like to ask a question. Yes, yes, please. Please come forward, sorry. And just press the little button with the man's face on it with a couple of lines coming out of it. And just state your name.
My name's Gordon Patterson, and I'm here today with my wife, several neighbours. We all live in close proximity to the organics plant situated in Bowser. And the organics plant is affecting all of us that live in that area. My question, I'm new to the meetings and I've read the script, so I've changed what I was going to do. A lot of that. Quickly, I want to ask if Council is aware that prior to commencing the organics plant, locals were never consulted in relation to it and didn't know about it until it was actually being built. Something I would expect Council would know about. And the other question that I would ask is, we still have ongoing issues regarding reporting of odours that are still occurring. Would Council be aware of the problems?
Thanks, Gordon. Correct me if I'm wrong, too, mate, is doing a meeting out there tomorrow as well?
I think it says that, maybe tomorrow. I need to check my diary.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And I think that's an open invitation to all residents if you want to meet out there to go over everything.
We're going to.
Oh, good. Great. Thanks, good. Marcus, a reply for that or a reply tomorrow out there at the meeting? And
I think to answer the first question, so there's a process that we need to go through with EPA to have anything like this approved, and that includes notifications to residents. So the notifications to the residents was done as per the requirements of the EPA. So that is that part of it. I think the second part of the question was probably, do councillors know that we have had some odour concerns over the preceding time?
And as a councillor, Director Goonan does bring them to us to say that we had a complaint about odour and it was checked out, etc. I'm not sure how many times that they have come to us, but there has been numerous times that they have come to us in our briefing session on a Monday to talk to us about certain odours and then what was done to try and investigate those odours, whether it be at night or in the middle of the night or in the afternoon or mornings, etc.
And I don't want to make it into a debate, because I've read what you said there. I think, in relation to the reporting, is it good enough that if something's reported at 3 o'clock, it's not investigated till 5:30 when it's an odour? I'm saying it's not good enough. And, cancelling these sort of things going on.
Sure, I'm not sure of the right capabilities of whether we can get people out there to investigate it or not in those short periods of time. Marcus, I look to you for advice on that.
Yeah, if it's an open complaint that comes through at 3 o'clock, and we receive it, it depends how it comes through the system, obviously we'll investigate it straight away.
Yeah.
There's also the ability for people to call the on-call staff outside of hours, and we have recently changed the way we go about that to make that system work a little bit better. We've had EPA come out on site and actually view how we go about these things and comfortable with the approach we're taking. Odours are difficult because they are sometimes there only for very short periods of time and move quite quickly. So I'm not saying that we're going to get all of them, but we have put every step in place that we believe we need to at least be able to deal with the ones that we encounter.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
Did you have another question there, Gordon?
Comments?
Yeah, I can.
We were looking to get EPA numbers of reports to EPA to get it cancelled today. Due to MOI, we just wouldn't get it in time.
Yep.
We're trying to put this question in the council, where with the reporting, we, as a resident, we have to duplicate our reports. We have to ring both the council and EPA, and now council was expecting residents to basically fill out a questionnaire, which also the EPA does. So it appears to me that we're doing the job for the council. Can there not be a better way of doing this?
Not sure on that one, but let's investigate it unless you've got something done.
The issue is that these smells most of the time are quite isolated. So what we're trying to do is actually figure out exactly where they're coming from and where they're heading to. So what we need to know right at the time of smelling them is the direction of the wind, what the conditions are like, etc. So we can actually physically get to site and see what's going on. It's not a perfect science and it's a difficult one. I don't doubt that, and it must be frustrating duplicating that evidence. But the reason we ask for that is by the time we've got out to have a chat with you, often the wind's changed, so the smell's not there, and we're unclear of where it was coming from at the time. So that's why we do ask for that additional information. What that's actually led to is that we now don't turn windrows when there's certain breezes going in certain directions during certain times, because we're finding that we're getting a lot of complaints over those periods. So the information that you're providing, it's not going unread or not going unlooked at. We have changed our processes, and I think if we look at the amount of complaints that we were getting before Christmas to what we're getting now, and please don't shoot me because it may not be 100% correct, they've certainly dropped off.
But please be at the meeting tomorrow, and I know I'm trying to get out there for it myself. It's in my diary. I've got conflict and things. I'll be out there. I think Harvey's going to be there too. So yeah, we'll certainly be out there as councillors to help have a look at the situation and make sure your voice is heard.
Appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Gordon. Are there any other questions from the gallery on any issues? Please, yes. Once again, just for your record there, please turn the button on. It should light up red there. Is it? No, on the top of the microphone it should light up red. That's it. Perfectly. Just state your name again for the record. All here.
I was just wondering, Dan, have you got into it with the season of the animals? I know you told me a couple of things ago in the pipeline.
I did something. It was, I got a report from somebody yesterday, and I was just trying to find it on my phone, and I'm not sure whether I've sent it on, that there's a certain I spoke to a fellow who wants to de-sex his cat, and they've got it in Corowa at the moment where the government is offering a discount of 50%. And he sent me the link to it, and I've just been trying to find it to bring it up to talk about it in here, but I can't find it. But I'll look again shortly and forward that to our director here. That is New South Wales though. The fellow has a couple of cats he wants to de-sex here in Wangaratta. He's a pensioner, cannot afford to, I think it was $250 per cat. I think the rebate was about around about $80 or $90 rebate on a pension, which he thought was great. So we're just looking at that. But thanks, Marie.
You reckon you'll do it?
I can't say that. We have to. It'll have to see what the government's going to give us for it, and then we'll go from there. So it's a process. Thanks, Marie. Any other questions from the gallery, please? Anne, please come forward once again. And again, Anne, state your name.
So Anne Anderson, at the 25th of October meeting, there was a discussion around the welcome signage to the small townships, and it was noted that the yellow that was produced was not the agreed yellow that the council expected, and that there was going to be a rollout of new signage which hasn't occurred yet, and it's still very difficult to read.
Yes.
So wondering, in that process, what is the timeframe around that? Is the contractor being held responsible for producing the wrong colours, and there's going to be labour costs involved for the council to tender that there are good signs, is covering the additional
We
costs.
did get briefed on that just late last week. I think, Brendan, did you have an answer to that one? I remember reading a report here.
I'll tell you what I know, and then Marcus can add anything if I miss anything. Everything you said is essentially correct. New signs have been ordered and are being manufactured. We have moved away from the yellow almost entirely. They will be predominantly blue with kind of a yellow part on the bottom third of the sign. We know the blue is much more easy to read and stands out in all conditions. So I think those signs are probably something like 4 to 5 weeks ago now, or about 5 or 6 weeks ago, away a week or so ago. I'm not sure about whether we're going to be able to recover anything from manufacturers, sign writers, etc. I don't know whether Marcus has any more info on that.
I suppose with regards to that, the reality was that the sign writer produced the signs that we had asked him to do. What the issue was is when they were mocked up and checked in the shop, they looked perfectly fine. Once we got them out there and we had a piece of light shining on them, that's what we've got wrong now. I'm happy to stick my hand up and say we got that wrong. These things happen. We've certainly worked quite hard on these ones to make sure they're going to be amazing. And we did put a stop as soon as we noticed that wasn't working to some other signs that could have been rolled out that were similar, and we've made some changes to those. So I did see that we have now got the manufactured signs, so it's just a matter of getting the contractor to have enough time to go out there and get them done. It won't be done by our guys. We don't have the ability to do signs of that size. It's a bit more of a specialist type thing.
And what is the lifespan of the sign? Because the original white signs that were removed hadn't actually been in place for 10 years. So
Yeah.
How do you define the life cycle of the sign? Because
It's a bit hard.
They actually didn't need replacing in our township that
Yep,
I
yep.
write through every day. So
Yeah.
and I know it's a consistent branding issue, but
Yeah, so that was obviously the reason we replaced them was around the branding that we've been working on as the Rural City for quite some time now. As far as the timeline of the signs, it depends how many times you shoot them with a shotgun. But realistically, we have a lifespan of 50 years on any of our signs.
thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Mr. Fox, I thought you had your hand up. Yes, you, Mr. Fox.
Somebody give me an agenda. Thank you.
And yes, Mr. Fox, you're welcome for the underpass.
Yes, I'm delighted with the underpass. And I hope nobody paints a picture on it. Just leave it alone. It looks clean, it looks
Talking to
tidy.
the wrong generation.
No problem at all. So, just a couple of administrative things. This colour that's on here, I'm suggesting to you that there is more ink used on the front page of this agenda than the whole of the rest of the agenda. It's an environmental waste to the community that I don't print the agenda anymore. I used to always print my agenda straight away, but it just uses up my ink tanks, and I refuse to do it. So I come into the front office and say, you print me one. And they do. But I think it should be changed. The other if I had to change it, sir, I would change that blue into a whole lot of little dots, which would use half of the ink, or I would fade it to a fader colour. But anyway, it's not my job to change it, it's my job to alert you to what I think is waste.
And that's not a question though, Mr. Fox. This is question time, and I'm happy for you to ask a question, not make statements.
Really?
Our previous people that got up, they asked good questions.
My question is, would you reduce the ink use in this?
I'll make sure that your agenda next time has little dots on it.
Thank you. My second question, sir, is that I have written a number of times, and I've had email backwards and forwards between officers of the council of notifying me or the general public when we have an item for auction. The CEO, after a 12-month period, gave me a disposal document. And that's in the public record, the disposal document. It really doesn't do the job. If council wanted to sell that desk tomorrow and they were going to send it to Pickles or whoever the auction house was, surely it is not much more difficult to add one email address. And that could be the Chronicle, or me, or anybody.
Brendan.
Thanks, Brian. I think in our discussions previously, we had agreed that we would put things going to auction into our Shire page in the Chronicle. We haven't done that in recent times, and I have reminded some of the staff who are responsible for those activities on that this morning, so I would expect we'll start to see those appearing on the Shire page when things are going to auction.
They'll still be for auction at the Pickles Auction House. But to notify you if you want to phone it, but you can certainly hop on the Pickles auction at any time and see everybody's disposal of items, not just councils.
Good. I'll be delighted when I see an advert in the Chronicle that we have something for sale. I've been at this for 3 years, and I'm only 86. I'm going to last to 100, so I'll keep on asking until you do something.
I would expect nothing else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Yes, please, ma'am. Come forward.
Vivian Burns again.
My question relates to the trotting track. It's another large area that's not really being used or well utilised. Is there any plan for the future expansion or use of the trotting track? It's a large area which is not well used.
Agreed, 100%. Do you want to talk to this, Brendan? But 100% agree with you.
Good.
Yeah, it's a really useful space that is well underutilised, I agree. There is a master plan, I think it's called the Wangaratta South Urban Design Master Plan or something to that effect, that was done quite some time ago, and it actually proposed that there were potentially an opportunity to build some other sporting fields inside the trotting track, be they hockey or soccer or something like that. We have looked at that a couple of times, and in fact, on one trip recently when we were doing a bit of a tour of things with the councillors, we did stop and have a bit of a walk around, have a look at that. So it definitely has been identified that there is an opportunity to further develop it for more recreational use. We don't have a current project to progress that, but it's definitely identified and something that is being thought about, I guess, would be the answer.
So there's no, my second question, so there's no plans for future expansion of the trotting industry, the harness racing industry here in Wangaratta?
I think the answer is probably not, although I can't really speak for Harness Racing Victoria. I think that track is generally considered pretty small and pretty tight by the harness racing fraternity, so as a result it's not widely used. I think they have 2 or 3 meetings a year or something like that there. And I suspect with the track in its current configuration, they're probably unlikely to do any more than that. And there probably isn't space, I don't think, to really completely reconfigure the track. But beyond that, that's really the Harness Racing Victoria.
It's a waste of space, though, isn't it? Thank you.
As Brendan said, Vivian, it's a great space, but a great underutilised space
very
at the
much.
moment in a prime area.
Thank you.
Great parking, great everything else. Lauren?
Can I just perhaps talk to Vivian's question? When we were administrators, we certainly looked at the trotting track and trying to invigorate that space with the trotting industry and then also greyhounds, but unfortunately that wasn't something that came over the line. But then also to look at potential for, as the CEO said, for playing fields. But for that to become a reality, we also would need the support of the state government to provide us with funding to be able to develop all of that. But it's certainly on the agenda, and you're very correct in saying that it is a space that's underutilised, and we should be able to do much more with it. But in order for that to happen, we need to have a bit more in the way of dollars. So that's it.
Thanks, Vivian. Well, if there's no further questions, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call our meeting today to a close. I'd like to thank you all for turning up, being a part of the meeting. I'd just like to say goodbye to one of our my executive assistant, Rebecca, who's moving to a different role here in the council, but still with council, and welcome our new EA, who is Amy Newman down the back there. So we've got a few different classes. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Rebecca and all of us for the great work you've done here in supporting, especially Brenda and myself, and all the councillors. So thank you, and we look forward to next few years with Amy.